can't remember whether it's 414 or 714. It's Trade Street.
Yeah, he probably knows where it is. It's on Thursdays?
Yep. Our next date will be there. We'll be there on the 17th.
You had anything with me?
We'll go, we use the
Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 10, 2015 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston-Salem TV digital media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is a consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. We think everything's on consent, so I'm going to dispense with the rest of the rules for the time being. I will mention, though, that items under Section B of our agenda require final action by the appropriate elected body, either the City Council or County Commissioners. So as such, votes taken here today will go to those bodies for their consideration. If you are addressing the board today, we will need your name, address, and zip code for the record. First item of business is approval of the minutes of the November 12 and 23 meetings. Are there any additions or corrections?
Move for approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Mulligan, second, Mr. Lamb. In discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now I'll call on Aaron King for our consent agenda.
All right, first item is zoning docket W 3279. This is a request to rezone about 3 acres from RS9 to general business special use zoning. You can see the site in yellow there on the south side of Renolda Road. You may remember this from last month. The petitioner asked for a continuance. It was automatic last month. They are back to ask for another continuance to your January meeting. You do have to vote on it this time, but staff does recommend approval of the continuance.
Okay. Is anyone in the audience opposed to a continuance request? Seeing none,
Move
then,
approval of the request for continuance.
motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is zoning docket W 3281, and this is a request to rezone from limited office pedestrian business and pedestrian business special use to residential single-family quadruplex. This is essentially the Holly Avenue neighborhood downtown. This also is for a 1-month continuance to the January meeting. They met the automatic deadline, so there's no need to vote on this. We'll hear this in January. Next item is zoning docket W 3283, and this is a request to rezone a little under 4 acres from highway business special use zoning to general business limited use zoning. You can see the site there on the south side of Polo Road, east of Cherry Street. The petitioner has requested withdrawal of this case. They did not meet the automatic deadline, so the board will have to vote on this, and staff does recommend approval of the withdrawal.
Anyone in the audience opposed to withdrawal request? Seeing none, which wishes the board?
We'll move we approve the request for withdrawal.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, by Mr. Bryan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is zoning docket F 1558, and this is a request to rezone a little under 17 acres from agricultural and RS 20 zoning to IP institutional and public zoning. You can see the site there in yellow. It's on the south side of Tobaccoville Road, a little bit west of the Tobaccoville Town Hall there. There's an existing church on the site. We did consult with the Village of Tobaccoville. They are in support of this request, and staff does recommend approval of IP zoning at this location.
Okay. Anyone opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion?
Yes. I had a couple questions. One of them is for the petitioner, if he's here.
Please come down and give us your name and address for the record, sir.
Sure, my name is Bryant Madron. Address is 6225 Tobaccoville Road, Tobaccoville.
And it said in the staff report that under neighborhood meeting, it said that a notice had been sent out to the homeowners, and I was wondering if that was different from what we normally send out. Did you send out your own mailing?
It was in conjunction with what you guys have already done. It was a recommendation for us to just send out just clarification of why we were wanting the IP change, and the reason was is so we can install a digital marquee for the church.
So you put that in the letter that you sent to,
We sent it's just an explanation letter that we just followed up with the residents in our area that received your original letter.
okay.
Just for clarification for them, because under the IP, there's other options that you can potentially have, but our main gist and original filing was for the marquee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I'll just make the comment, keeping in mind, this is a general
Yeah,
use
right.
rezoning, so all the uses, regardless of what's said in terms of the intent, all the uses are open there, so.
Correct.
And then I had a question for staff on this. I'm trying to understand the difference, what you can do in IP that you can't do in RS and ag. And if you have is it a neighborhood level church, which is allowed now, and a community level church that would be allowed in IP? Is that the case?
Both are allowed in IP. The neighborhood would be the 600 seats or less, and then the community, I believe, is a use by right as well. That's 600 seats or more in the IP district.
In IP?
Yes.
But a community church would have to have their site plan approved by the planning board.
And is there any cap on the number of a community level church? Cap of seats?
There's no max, no.
Okay,
No.
all right.
A community level church doesn't require IP zoning, does it?
No, community level church is allowed in
It's allowed in RS 20 and ag.
ag, but it's a planning board review.
Correct.
Right. So it's same planning board review requirement for the IP.
Right.
So They cannot have a community-level church now under their current zoning, or they could?
They could, it would require planning board review.
But would require, okay.
Right.
All right. That answers my question then. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, last item, W 3282. This is a special use permit request for expansion of institutional parking in RS7 zoning. This is for property located on the east side of Dunleith, north of First Street. You can see the subject property there in yellow. Just to the south of that is the existing Zion Memorial Missionary Baptist Church, and they're looking to expand parking onto the lot that's shown there in yellow. And this is the site plan that was submitted with the request. You can see the existing church there to the south and a proposed addition. And the portion that's outlined in red is really the lot that's in question. You can see there's basically 11 parking spaces and the buffer yard that's required around those on the subject property. This is a planning board review today for the planning board. It will go forward to the city council as a special use permit, where there will be a quasi-judicial hearing and testimony given. But for the purposes of today's meeting, this is a planning board review. Staff does recommend approval of this request.
Move approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a question about the impervious surface. Is this going to increase, how much would it increase, and how close is that to the maximum?
Salem watershed.
The RS9 district does not have a maximum impervious coverage. Let's see. They're showing 72%. 72% on the, and I assume that's on the subject property, not the entire church.
They have the option to, RS and IP districts may be increased to 75% with staff approval of a landscape plan. It has to demonstrate, they have to double the planting requirements to allow them to go to a higher percentage of impervious surface coverage.
So there is an impervious coverage for churches in the RS9 district.
That's correct.
Is that 60%?
It's 60.
And you can go up to 75 with additional landscaping, which they have done, is that? And they're at 72%.
So that triggered the additional landscaping?
Yes, above 60%, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
And the reason I'm asking, I couldn't see very well on what we were given. It looks like there were a couple of trees that they're planting in the corners of the parking lot, is that right? And I was just wondering if those were large variety or...
The ordinance requires them to be, the trees in the street yard there at the corner would be large variety unless there's an encumbrance by the overhead power lines. And all the trees in the buffer yard would have to be large variety as well.
I have one question. Do you mind? I know the churches don't pay property tax, but do they pay stormwater fees, churches?
I believe so.
They do? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion for approval. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. I will point out that this will be heard at City Council. They're not having a January 4 meeting, so it's going to be January the 19th, I believe, is when it'll be on the agenda. So, okay, staff report?
Okay, just a few things here. First of all, wanted to ask the board's opinion about something. As you know from experience with a few continuances, our rules for continuance are spelled out in our bylaws, and the current wording of the bylaws says that when someone is asking for the first continuance, as long as they get that request in by the Monday before the planning board meeting, then it is automatically granted. So the planning board doesn't have to decide whether to continue it or not. And that has been very helpful when those things are automatic, because then the staff can advise citizens who are calling in wondering whether the hearing's going to be held or not, that it is automatically continued. So there's no question mark or guesswork about whether the planning board will grant the continuance. That automatic continuance only applies to that first requested continuance. And so what we're wondering, based on some recent experience we've had, is whether you would be amenable to amending the bylaws to let that apply to the second continuance. As you know, it can only be at the planning board 3 times before it has to go to the elected body. So the second continuance would be the last one that could be requested. Should the same rules apply to that? Because I think what we're running up against is when it's a discretionary thing and neighbors are worried about it, they're not sure whether to come to that planning board hearing, concerned about whether you all are going to continue it or not, or what. So that would make things a little easier to communicate clearly to people who are calling into the office. So if you all are amenable to that, we can put that amendment together and bring it to you at your next meeting if you'd like.
Yeah,
Good.
I think
Good.
so.
I'm amenable to it. I just wonder how often it has been the case where a second continuance was requested and we did not accept it.
I don't think you ever have, but what we have to say to people who call in is there's no guarantee.
Right.
We say, we've never heard of you not doing it, but there's no guarantee. And that causes sometimes people angst and
Right.
wondering whether they should come down here to make sure it's going to be continued, or are you going to have a hearing anyway, and should they be ready to testify and all that. So.
Well, this happened today. I got a call from Mr. Stimmel earlier today. Did he need to be here? And I said, well, you probably should. I said, because it's not automatic. Now, in the last 15, 16 years, we've never not granted that second continuance. There have been occasions where folks have shown up and said, I can't be there next month. I'd like to say something, and we've allowed them to speak. And I told them, that I said that could happen today, but so I think it makes all the sense in the world to make it automatic.
I think Councilmember McIntosh, sitting in the audience, has had the same experience this week on that same zoning case with people calling them and want to know, is it going to be continued or not?
So I think it makes sense to make that change.
My only concern is that the information gets to the folks who might need to know so they don't show up unnecessarily.
Right. Well, and in those cases where we get it in time, we ask the petitioner to reach out to everybody who they have been in contact with and let them know. And then anybody who we have been in contact with, who we know about, we let them know if they call in, or somebody called a day or two before and we have their number, we can let them know. Okay. Second thing is, you may recall from our work program, for the last couple years, we have had an item in there to support the possible creation of a farmland preservation plan for the county. And that was dependent on the county getting a grant to do that. We would not be the lead agency, but we would certainly play a support role. Well, the county did get a grant for that, and the Agricultural Extension Service is the lead agency on that. And so they're getting ready to start a process to create a farmland protection plan. And they would like to set up what they call a leadership group, what we would call an advisory group on that. And they wanted to see if both a staff person would be on that, as well as a planning board member would be on that. So I wanted to ask you, is there anyone on the planning board who would be interested in being on that leadership committee? I would imagine it would probably meet 2, 3, maybe at most 4 times during the process. The consultant who they are bringing on board to write the plan is somebody who's very familiar to you. It is somebody by the name of Glenn Simmons. You might recall him.
I was going to sign up, but I want to change my mind now.
So, but he'll be working with the staff there to write the plan, but they want to have some meetings to do that. So, is anyone on the board interested in being on that group? The first meeting is actually December 15th, next Tuesday. We
I
can
think
get you-
Paul and Brenda both would sign up.
You want? Okay. Well, I'll send them both your names
Yeah.
and say you'd both like to be on there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
that'd be great.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Thank you very much. Let's see. For January, we have 4 new zoning cases that have been filed, plus the 2 continued ones that you have from today, so you have a total of 6. And sign check for that will actually be the Monday after Christmas, December 28th. So I don't know if you all know yet whether you'll be there or not, but we'll plan on going out at 1:15 on Monday, the 28th, for anyone who wants to come with us. Area plans, just status on area plans. We had our final Southeast Suburban area plan drop-in session this past Tuesday. I think we had 1 citizen and 1 reporter show up. And so, but no issues that have come up on that. We've had good attendance and not so good attendance throughout the whole 4 series of meetings. So, and we've had a lot of help from the Kernersville News in getting the word out to people. So, so I think that's probably more of a function of there's not too many controversies in there. And then the Southwest area plan, we're going to have our second meeting next week. Is that Tuesday, I think? Tuesday or Thursday? Can't remember which that is. But our second meeting that we'll be talking about land use next week on that. And I think with that, that is all I have for staff report.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Before we leave, I just want to say to Paul and to the staff how much we appreciate everything you've done this year. We wish all of you a very happy, safe holiday season, and we'll look forward to seeing you in January. So, any, board members, anything for the good of the order here today?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Well, I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and yes, it's hard to believe that 2016 is here, and next time we get together it'll be 2016, so everyone have a blessed and happy new year. With that, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? We're adjourned.